All right, so it'll be being recorded. And so, Charles, if you want to introduce yourself first, and then Ludo, and let you take over the presentation.
Okay, yeah, I'm Charles Delap, area sales manager for Roxell in the United States. Basically, if you look at the map of the United States, just carve out the middle portion from Iowa, Minnesota, Arkansas, Missouri, Nebraska, just all the way down, basically the central portion of the United States.
So tell us just a little bit about you have yourself takes the middle portion, so like today we have Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, of course Kansas. You cover all those. How far east do you get? Ohio, or is that somebody else?
We actually there's 4 U.S. area sales managers. We have one that covers basically the east coast and eastern portion of Canada. Then we have another sales manager that basically takes Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, the Midwest. And I have the central portion as we identify. The central portion, actually, I now left out Canada. Saskatoon, Winnipeg, just the central portion of Canada as well. And then we have the western portion of the U.S. and western.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, I'm just gonna mute everybody. I see Kyle, you came on too. I'm gonna mute you until we get to questions. I can certainly do that. Okay. All right. Kyle was the noisy one. Okay. All right.
So Ludo, maybe a bit of an introduction for yourself as well too, and kind of how you fit within the Roxell system as well.
Well, my name is Ludo Bosgaerts. I'm the big product manager for Roxell. Roxell basically has 2 places where we do innovation. One of them is Belgium, and the other one here in the US. I'm based from Belgium, where I follow all the innovations. I follow all the markets worldwide, try to detect if there are different needs or different needs developing, and then hopefully have a product available by the time it's really needed for the market, that we have a very competitive product. If things need to be changed, that also comes to me, and I say there are some complaints about this or that, and then we try to do something about it. And we have several product managers. I'm the one for pigs, we have one for poultry, one for layers, one for heating, one for ventilation, that sort of thing. And I'm responsible for the pigs, so I follow it up all the markets worldwide and then try to have the correct products available for all the different needs.
Good. Well, we will let you go ahead with the presentation, and for those that are listening on remotely, if you run into any problems, let me give you my cell phone number. If you don't have it too, it's 785-532-8312. That's 785-532-8312. And if you have any trouble, you can either text me or call, and we'll try to grab it and get it straightened out.
Okay. So we have
not working. I have to. There.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is about one of our systems, and that's what we call the multifast. It's a weighing mixing system that allows you to deliver feed to certain outlets in the composition that you want it. In this first slide, you see all the different components, which I will elaborate on a little bit more further on. First of all, obviously, you need a transport system to deliver the feed to a certain location. There we have 2 possibilities, a flex hour system or a chain system. You need an automatic outlet so that we know the correct position where a feed is going to be delivered. Another main component is a weigher mixer, where all the different feed components are delivered to. It's mixed and then distributed from. We have a few options which I will talk about, which is a switch valve, so that we can have more hoppers underneath it, so to speed up the system and to increase the capacity. And also recent development is the speed controller, because that's because of larger capacities needed in the farms that we introduce that. We need a controller and a program to manage it all. And then at the end, I also will have a little bit talk about of the concepts where we use this multi-phase system in, which is a multi-phase feeding system, and more also home mixing, so that people who produce on their own farm certain ingredients, that they can use it for their purposes. Here you see a little bit of an overview. First of all, you have the storage bins. From those, different feedstuffs are delivered to the weigher mixer, which is centrally. You also see that a lot of these pipes are empty, because normally the multi-phase system always works with an empty tube system. It's only certain batches that will be traveling. Here you see it with flex augers and different sections, and if we can at the same time deliver feed in different sections, as long as they don't interfere with each other, we can do that to speed up the system. But I will tell a little bit more about all these things in more detail now in the presentation. The transport system, the flex auger, we have different sizes of flex augers, starting from 56 millimeters diameter up to 125. 125 is also again introduced because of larger capacities that are needed. The biggest capacity in transport with flex augers is 1,500 kilograms per hour with full tubes, but you need to deduct about 1/3 if you're working with empty tubes, because the capacity will obviously, for obvious reasons, decrease a little bit. It's a system that's very robust. There's operational, you don't need to worry too much about it. We, as a company, we give a 10-year warranty on augers and the tubing system. With straight lines, which we use with the multi-fast, there's hardly any wear out. Most of the wear out you see is in situations where you use bends, but that's something we try to avoid in our multi-fast system. The feed transport is very safe. With pellets, they hardly ever get broken. The Novacore is also a tube that doesn't attract the feed. It doesn't stick to the side walls. And also the dimensions of the augers and the tubes, they are really adapted to each other, so that there is no feed left over in the tubes. As I said, it's an empty tube system. There's only certain batches that are traveling within the system. And here you see on the picture, you see how we do it. You could sort of say we can do this with a bend, but then you get more wear out on the system. We use it more like that with a feed box where it goes from one line in the other. This also gives you a large flexibility in designing the system. You can change directions, you can add another section later on if you want to. All sorts of these things can be done. This is a little bit an overview how you can do it with the chain system. The drawing is a little bit bad because it's not the automatic outlet which is in there, but for the rest it's fine. You have sort of a drive unit, you have corners, and you have the outlets, and the multi-fast feeds into that system. More and more we see that people use on the side of the system like that a day bin which they fill, and that feeds into the augers into the chain system. But a small disadvantage with this system is that you always will have some leftover feed somewhere in the corners, and it sticks there for a little while, and then all of a sudden it can come loose and it needs to go somewhere. You really need to have somewhere a bin which takes care of this. And if you want to really work precisely in a research facility, I would not advise to use this like for feed hoppers and things like that. Yeah. You could use it with a day bin and then distribute it in sow crates or in the farrowing house. That can be done perfectly all right, because then you have another system will measure how much the sow will get at each day.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what we were thinking in terms of the clean out. But you're saying is these corners are the problem.
Yeah.
Is that
we have an option to have brushes in there. Then you diminish the problem, but it's not the way. Yeah. It's not completely. Okay. But it's a very flexible system in terms of layout. Mm-hmm. But I would use it more like having a day bin in front of it who fills the system, and that system then distributes later on the feed to the different outlets. So if you look at the two systems and compare them, if you're looking for capacity, certainly go for the flex hour system. Also, you have no rest feed or hardly any. It's a system that can very easily be extended. It's easy to put another flex hour connected to the system, and you just program them into the program, and off you go. It's not too difficult. And it's a more flexible delivery order. You can send like a batch to the hour on the left hand side, and at the same time start another batch off to the right hand side. So it's again capacity. That's a lot less with the chain system, and also it's a bit, the problem there is with the rest feed.
So when you're talking about the 7,000 kilogram per hour delivery, that could be that's based on how much. I mean, if you're going to, like in your diagram here, if you had is that 7,000 for the whole system or 7,000 down one?
No, 7,000 for the whole system.
For the whole system. Okay.
Per hour, but you did get work 10 hours.
Yeah, so exactly. You work 24 hours. Yeah.
But I must also, with the chain system, I can say that it's a very durable system. We have, since I've been working with Roxell, it's now 4 years, I don't think I can remember a problem with it. It's, some other systems you sometimes hear a complaint about this or that, but for that system, it's one of the most reliable ones in the market, I think. But the disadvantage there is also you can only send one batch at a time, because another batch will go into the same chain, in the same loop, and that is something the system can't cope with. But each outlet can have a different composition, whatever you like. We use automatic outlets. We have a type of outlet for each different type of tube. The size of the tube is adapted to, or rather the other way around, the automatic outlet is adapted to the size of tube we use. It's completely in plastic, it's very durable, it's strong. I've seen it already, some people that they put it outside, and we don't see too many problems with them. And normally, all these automatic outlets are closed, bar from the one that needs to be open. And then the feed delivery is programmed as such that the outlet will open well before the batch can arrive, and will be closed a little while after the batch should have gone. So it's at the setup, it's all calculated at times, how long it takes to get to a certain outlet and that sort of thing. And it's programmed in and checked. And once that's done, you can work with it, and you will not see too many problems with that. With the automatic outlet, that can be connected directly to a hopper, like the first picture there. Then you're filling hoppers in a pen. Or you can work with day bins, as I said before. So you just fill a day bin in front of a building. That can be a building which is operated with a chain system or with a flex hour system. Both systems can be used. Then the weigher mixer itself. A recent addition is the 200-liter weigher mixer. They're both completely made out of stainless steel. We have also improved the mixing capacity, the mixing ability. In the past was just a rough mixture, and we didn't put too much attention into it because we thought, well, it will drop down, it will mix again, and then in the flex hour it will mix a little bit. That's all true, but for research facilities, we have the option that also the mixing is a lot better. And for that reason, we also replaced the load cells, which you see just hanging on top there. The first ones we were always using, they were very good in weighing, but they were only dealing very well with up and down movement. But now with the increased mixing, we have added the load cells that also can cope with pressure that comes from the side. So that also in that circumstances, that the weighing is still accurate. the use of the weigher is optimized by adding another hopper. So that one is dropped, starts, and is being delivered. The weigher mixer starts on another batch and it's dropped into the other side, and it toggles like that. And so that we increase the capacity of the system.
So so it's 100 or 200 liter.
Yeah.
What weight? I'm trying to get my conversion in my head. What weight?
You're not supposed to have a good mixing. You're not supposed to fill it completely. So
right.
With the 100 liter, typically we are aiming for about 50 kgs batches.
Okay.
And with the 200 liter for about 100 kg. Okay. We have different mounting possibilities. Either it can be on a standing frame on the floor, or they can be stuck against the wall. Depend on a little bit on the layout of the facility. Since the 200 liter weigher mixer is the recent addition, we also have put some more emphasis in possibilities of cleaning the system. So you see there are two big windows. In the past, like with the 100 liter weigher mixer, they were fixed with bolts onto them. With the 200 liter, we have made it clip-ons. That it's easy to open. Then you can inspect if there's something stuck somewhere. Because like in a recent facility, we're also using oil in it. Then we advise a cleaning facility occasionally that weekly that the weigher mixer is clean. If you start using like liquids and oil. But if you but certainly it's an addition which is useful, I think. With all the developments we are doing, we always take cleaning into advance, into account. It's becoming more and more an issue on farms. People want to clean and disinfect if need be, that sort of thing. And that's something we take into account in all our developments.
Can you change the mixing time on the mixer? Can you adjust that, or is that a set?
No, that's something you can set. Because some people are sometimes, like we're dealing more and more also with wean to finish facilities in some countries. And there in the startup, we often see that they just deliver a pellet and they don't mix. They just deliver the pellets, and then you can put no mixing. Or you can put a higher mixing time. That's up to the accuracy yourself you are aiming for. If your accuracy need is less, then you can speed up the facility, or you can have a longer mixing.
Because in cases where we have delivering complete diets, that all we need to do is weigh them.
Yeah, that's possible. Then you just put the mixing time to 0, and it's delivered like that.
And it would be a possibility to put in a system without the mixing capability if they wanted to?
Yes, I suppose so.
Do you want
That's where I was going, Jason.
We did, but you just elect to use it or not.
And if you just want to make complete diets, you can.
Yeah, and then certainly when you start using like accuracy because you have some minerals and increase.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry, I'm kind of trying to get the mutes going.
So obviously with the two weigher mixers available, we have some guidelines where we have some cutoff points where you go from one to the other. It's not clear cut, but you need always to look a little bit on what are you going to do with it. But normally in terms of capacities per day, we would say 100 liter weigher mixer can cope up to 40 tons per day. If you go above that to 20, 24 tons, then we would go to a 200 liter. If you have few ingredients, you don't need to have a lot of time to put one in, another one on top of it and mixing it. Then you can stick with 100 liter. If you're using lots of different ingredients, then obviously by making a larger batch, the changing from one to another the time is limited by using a larger batch. If you're going to add premixes, if you're adding 30% premixes, 100 liter can be used. If you're going to dose in like 1 or 2% premixes, you better go to a larger batch because it's always easier to weigh 1 kg than 200 grams on the system with flex hours.
Makes sense.
And again, also if you're just filling hoppers, feed hoppers, then the capacity is usually less. Then you stick with 100 liter. If you're going to fill day bins, it's better to go with the 200 liter.
Yeah, I think the 100 liter is probably most of the applications we're thinking of.
That's what I would think.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of the number of pens and
And
the
yeah,
size.
the size of the feeders.
Yep.
The 200 liter is really for capacity.
Yep.
And also more and more, because we see like in Argentina, we have put some systems in. People are using it more as a feed kitchen,
Yeah.
and putting it in on larger farms also,
Yes.
their capacity is an issue.
Yeah.
And therefore also the 200 liter was something we really needed.
Makes sense.
That's a little bit a few examples of how we bring it in. So we have on top of the weigher mixer a multiple control unit, we call it. And there you can have one or two hanging above it, and that drops into the weigher mixer, and then it's mixed like that.
So like on this example on your right-hand side, those are all going into one
One-weigher mixer.
weigher mixer.
Yeah. And it's
so
two per level.
There's like other,
So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
it's like 10 lines going in.
10 lines going in there.
Okay. Is there a limit to how high you can go on those? Ceiling?
Our maximum capacity is about 20.
About 20?
Yeah.
You'll run out of statistical power before we probably get to that point.
Yeah, you're probably right. I was just thinking of some of our barns where we're set up with 12 bins and stuff to make sure that fits.
Yeah, that fits.
Yeah, and I mean, I was even talking with Joel here too, wondering if we could imagine a scenario where you make one basal batch in the feed mill, but then you've got a small 1 pound premix, as an example, that you blend in this feed kitchen to form the treatments, and then in these batches maybe.
It's definitely possible.
Or if you have more than one barn you're trying to feed on it and you've got 2 trials, that'd be the other place that come in handy.
Yeah, I think most of the time you'd probably be having a couple diets that you'd be blending if you did use a mixer, but it could be done for adding small inclusions. Yeah.
Some of the options we have added is obviously the switch valve, so that we can add an extra hopper underneath a weigher mixer. With that, we increase the capacity of the system with 50%. We still make sure that there are no sort of corners where the feed doesn't flow very well, so that we have 100% dropout. That is something that's obviously important. With the 100 liter weigher mixer, we have these 80 kilograms hoppers. With the 200 liter weigher mixer, we have about a 250 kg stainless steel hopper underneath it, or 2 if you want. Another addition is the speed controller. Because of the higher capacities all the time, we're also feeding in like with 125 flex hours. And obviously, if that is with a motor which delivers like 10 tons per hour, if 1 or 2 seconds more, you get a lot of feed coming in. And to avoid that, the computer always needs to adapt, because if you add too much, then he needs to recalculate how much from the other ingredients he needs. To avoid that, we have a speed controller. So when he's getting nearer the amount that's needed, the speed of the flex hour is slowed down, so that it's really sort of coming little by little in, and that it stops when it needs to stop. So that's an improvement for these larger capacities. And also to dose in smaller quantities, obviously, then it's also important that you can do that, because then it will be more precise. And certainly with the smaller quantities, you're usually talking about an ingredient which costs more.
Yeah.
You don't want to waste it. So therefore also this could be.
So make sure I understand this. This is, Adonis, it's an option. So you could, if you were just going to use complete diets, you wouldn't need to add this option.
Not really need
Yeah.
it, no. Okay. Because a lot of the farms, they have a finishing barn, they have 3 silos in front of it, with a protein-rich diet, and a one in the middle, and a less, and then mix it for phase feeding. Then you don't really need it.
Okay.
But like if you really want to be sure,
if you're doing what Jason was talking about, adding.
Then it's certainly a nice improvement. Then the controller, we have a small window where you can see everything on the box itself, where the CCP is housed in. And there we have possibilities on programming it in on the box, but you can do the same with the farm manager, which I will talk about after this, on your PC, which is a bit handier than a small window. Installation comes with the choice. When we deliver it worldwide, we let the farmer choose his language.
Yeah.
So we have
That's nice.
many languages in there, and it comes delivered with correct. It's an easy installation because the box is completely configured for the setup with the layout in mind. So there's no difficulty in there. Just the installer or distributor needs to hook it up to the system.
Any probably maybe get this later, but anything in terms of electricity with some of our site differences we have in the U.S. compared to Europe on 220?
Yeah, that's all taken into account.
You can run on.
We're selling worldwide, so we're dealing with all sorts of 60 hertz, 50 hertz, 220, 110, three-phase, one-phase. It needs to be set beforehand, and then the system is developed for it.
Okay.
With the farm manager that I'm sure you'll talk about, is it something also for like post-sale service? I mean, someone from Belgium could dial in and diagnose a problem if they're.
That's also the idea. More and more we want to do that, and we are not there yet. But in the future, we'll all be sort of housed in the cloud, and that we can easily communicate, and nobody needs to come on. Which can be seen from a desk, for instance. But that's what the thing we are working on also. But we can dial in that you can take over the screen and look at it and that sort of thing.
So this controller is something your company designed and put together, and it interacts with the farm manager software that runs the system from the computer.
All the data are stored in the system, and there is a backup possibility on an SD memory card in the system. And there's also an override possibility that we override the automatic control of the system and do it manually. If there is something wrong, then you can use a manual control and send feed still out, so that you don't have pigs going over the weekend without feed. There's no need for that. This is just a little bit of the possibilities we have. As I said already, the number of ingredients we cope with is about 20. Number of feeding places is about 496. That is taking into account that we need some automatic outlets for change of directions on the circuit. Number of feed curves has gone up recently to 30. Each curve can have 20 bending points within it. We can have 20 routes and 30 sections. A route is one going to in a certain direction, and the section is in between, that you have motors in between and extensions if it's long, if it's a long flex over system. And on top of that, you can add some clocks for watering, lighting, and that sort of thing. And all these data can then be exported. So for that, we have the farm manager. It is taking simple access to the data, but the main thing is that you can program in it what you want to do, and then use that program also to export data to a PC, that you can have all these data read into an Excel file, and do with pivot tables afterwards, whatever you want to do with them, and analyze the data. So the farm manager is just to put in your feeding desires, and cope and plan your layout, and then store the data and exchange them with the other management systems you might have. That's sort of a screenshot from what you can see of a certain setup. You see all the different feed bins. If you feed into the system the feed deliveries, it will keep track of the amount of feed within the bin, roughly. You can also work with load cells under the feed bins, whatever you choose. Mm-hmm. You see the weigher mixer in the middle, the hopper. You will see where, if it's a live screen, you will see where it's active, where the feed is moving, if the weigher mixer is mixing, if there's feed coming from one or another bin, you can all see on the screen. So it gives you a clear overview from your setup and what's actually working at that moment in time.
Can I ask you on your screens right here, you have the FanCom name up here.
Yeah.
So the connection with FanCom and Roxell?
It's a sister company.
Okay.
So it's a full sister company. We belong to the same C2B group.
Sure.
So we exchange programs with each other. We work together. They are more specialized in ventilation, heating. Mm-hmm. We are more specialized in feeding systems.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Obviously, farm manager controls the multifast. It communicates with it and can also be seen on a PC. And it allows simple access for data, can sampling data, feeding into Excel files or other files you might use. It can control different multiple sites. So from one location, you can have a look at how the system is doing on different locations. On farm, you can look at it. In the barn, you can look at your own control cars. There are different locations where you can look at the system. And each location is probably more appropriate for a different type of people. A farm manager probably will look more in the barns. Somebody overlooking the farm manager will look from his office and that sort of thing. That's all possible. For distance control, you need a farm manager. Export data, you need it also. Sampling data and that sort of thing. And the personalized overview. So that's why you need the farm manager, but you only need one for your entire setup. Then a brief word, I will go quickly through it, but it's part of the presentation about multi-feeding. I suppose most of you know what it is. Yeah. So you want to get the right type of feed to the right location, to the right pen, adapted to the life cycle of the animal and the weight, the age. Obviously, with the aim to reduce your feeding costs and optimize the performance. And we see that more and more feeds are coming into the picture. When I started working in pigs, we had one starter, we had one grower, one finisher, but now more and more people are fine-tuning. We see sometimes because of legislation, people are no longer allowed to castrate. Immediately within the same barn, you have two different types of animals which need different feeding strategies. Again, the multi-phase feeding or the multifast from Roxell can be an answer in developing a right feeding strategy for these circumstances. What multi-feeding is like. Some results mainly that you use more of the cheaper feed, and that there is less excretion of nitrogen and phosphor to the environment. In countries where there's a lot of animal production, or in region where and the manure cost, because of legislation, is going up all the time. It's also a selling point. People have to use and things like that. Again, there's less nitrogen being come into the air, so those systems need to work less as well. So it's the multifast is an answer in this type of setup, that we can use different ingredients, some farms they just buy 3 composed feed and then mix them during the lifetime and always have the right sort of feed available.
Does it feed them? Does it feed them by time or by kilograms per?
There are 2 options, which I'll come in a second. Okay. Obviously, this is needed, like what I've said before, the transport system array, a mixer, controller. But then we have 2 possibilities. You can either choose that you're going to dose, and that is a system where you send X amount of kilograms of pounds per day to a certain outlet. Or you can have a system with a sensor in each outlet, which is going to ask for feed. When it drops below a certain level, the sensor will send a message to the controller, and he will organize then the feed delivery to that outlet. So those are the 2 options we have available.
My question is that with that second option, which that makes sense to me for a lot of our applications, that can you then tell it that, for example, I want 6 kilograms of this diet, and when it's done feeding that 6 kilograms, it moves to the next diet automatically.
That's something you need to put into the feed.
Yeah,
curves,
you put it in,
yeah.
but some of the systems in the market will only do it by days. You can't tell it, I want 6. I have this budget of so many kilograms per pig all the way through.
That can be put in, but is a bit more complicated. Yeah.
And for research barns, you would definitely want the second type,
Yeah.
because if you're defining an amount per day and that feeder
Then you gotta read
can't
the feeders.
handle it,
Yeah.
then it's diverted to that feeder
Yeah,
each
yeah,
time. And then once it's full, so what happens in those cases where you sent 50 kgs and the feeder only needed 40, and now you
Oh,
have
yeah,
feed up in the
It
line?
goes to the bucket at the end.
Yeah. Is that what
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
clears
yeah,
it to the end of the line? Okay.
We'd want the sensor.
But the one with the dosing system, in my previous job, I was working for a feed company. I was looking after one customer who was using the multifast, and he was using the dosing system because he, all the way through, with his silos, with his hoppers, he likes a point that they are empty.
Yeah.
And cleaned. If he wants to clean his silos, that he can do it. And every day he wanted also the individual feed hoppers to be empty. So he was dosing, and every day, also in the weekend, at the same moment of the day, he was going around and looked at the hoppers.
Yeah.
If they were too full, he would diminish a little bit. If they were empty and clean, licked very clean, he would increase a little bit.
We don't want to spend that much time.
But I must say, he was the guy who was achieving in feed conversion the best result.
Oh yeah, I believe
the
it.
very, very best. Like
Yeah,
he was finishing from like 25 to 120 kgs.
Yeah.
He would attain sort of feed conversion from 2.2 to 2.4 per batch,
Yeah.
where the average from Belgium is 2.8, 2.9.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a 500 grams per kilogram difference,
Yeah.
which is massive.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah. But he puts the effort in, and
Yep.
he's fine-tuning all the time. He
So-
doesn't have this big, massive farm.
Yeah.
He had about 300,000 all the offspring, but that's how he made his money, and he was outperforming all the others by a length. But those are the two options. They both have sort of disadvantages. If you want to restrict feed, then it's obviously a bit difficult because you need to go around all the time and that sort of thing. With the registration, restricting is less possible. You really need to interfere yourself and sort of overrule a sensor and that sort of thing. It's possible, but complicated. If you're really into the restricted feeding, like some of the genetics in some countries where they put on a lot of fat at the end weight, then they want to restrict a little bit, and then this type of feeding system is a little bit more difficult to control. But with modern genetics, there is less a need for that. And then you see sort of the sections with all the different outlets, different bins feeding into the weigher mixer. They can leave in different directions. If you sort of look at section 3 and you would decide to extend that one, that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to divert or extend section 1 further to a new barn, that all can be done, as long as it's within the parameters.
Yeah.
But if we can go up to 20 tons per day, so the extension possibilities are really there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sometimes a little bit more complicated. One addition I've felt to mention before is that also now we have introduced also that the weigher is also, the scoops can go left and the next time they can go right. We can choose that as well, so that the mixing is again better and there's less risk of feed sticking somewhere in the weigher mixing. And then the recent addition where I'm focusing up more and more because I see big possibilities for it is that using the system more as a home mixing system. For instance, like in Argentina, they're already experiencing that they see that certainly in Europe, there's a big drive towards shorter chains. They want to have local feedstuff used for the production from local produced meat and that sort of thing. And they are looking more and more for replacements for the soya from Argentina, the the US or wherever they buy it. And in Argentina, some of these people are already saying, well, we're going to try to use it already a little bit ourselves and produce pig meat. And also the pig consumption is going up in Argentina, which is also a big help. And on this drawing, you see that the feed mill and the mixing is outside the fence. So the lorries only deliver to those 4 big hoppers alongside the yellow thing. And then that's going to a milling facility in the square above it. And from there, it's going into the different hoppers, which are the storage for the multifast. And from there, it's then supplied into the weigher mixers, which then are transporting feed and in different compositions to different locations. On larger farms, I see that they're more and more working with day bins. So each section of the buildings has a day bin, which is filled every day, and then is distributed from the day bin without automatic outlets. It's just that you need an automatic outlet above the day bin, and from there is done with timers and a time clock distributed into the building, which is connected to the day bin. This also helps with the sort of safeguarding health status. All the deliveries are outside your farm. No lorries need to go in. Most of the time, they also have pathways where the slaughter pigs are brought to the fence as well and loaded there. So no foreign lorry needs to go on the farm anymore after it's established. And that's obviously a big help in safeguarding health status.
That makes sense.
And that's the reason why I want to position it more and more also against, like in the past, certainly in Europe, a lot of people are thinking, oh, milling and mixing, that's wet feeding. And wet feeding also has its disadvantages. You need a lot of maintenance. You need a lot of cleaning because everywhere on the pipes there is some leftovers which stay there for a while.
The thing I've never thought about this is replacing the on-farm grinder mixers that some of our smaller farms where we don't have toll milling capabilities, like in Kansas. There's some options there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we started with it in Argentina. There's a big demand there, and people are more and more looking into using their own grains, and in the return also have manure available for the fields and save a little bit on fertilizers and that sort of
Which that'd be the situation with a lot of our producers that have traditionally done it with smaller on-farm mills, and as their mills wear out or they're struggling with what to replace it with because there aren't as many options as there were 20 years ago.
But also likewise for people who want to work with the feed company, they just have the bins, the storage bins outside the fence. It's delivered there and then it's mixed with the multi-phase system and it's distributed into the farm. And you have the advantages of the multi-phase system at the same time.
Very good.
Well, that was roughly it. So if you have questions,
feel
free to answer, to ask.
I'm going to unmute everybody. Some of you may be muted on your end.
What does the support look like in terms of call-in versus web chat versus on-farm as we get to some of these rural parts of the country? If parts break down, turnaround times on some of those things, opportunities for troubleshooting issues. How do you guys go about handling that?
Well, there are different levels of support we do. First, obviously, as a company, we work with distributors. They are locally based, and certainly for the products like the multifast and another product which is our feeders, which is the electronic sow feeding. All distributors who want to install it need to be trained. They need to get sort of like a certificate from Roxell to be able to sell this system. They need to follow a training first before they even can start thinking about selling it. That's to start with. And certainly when they do the first installations, somebody from Roxell will go before they start installing it to advise what to do about it. After they install the system, he will come again and commission it so that it becomes operational. And then the first point of call is obviously going to be the distributor if there's something wrong. But I must say the system is fairly robust. There were very few things that go wrong, because if you would take you around to some of our farmers, you would ask what you replaced. They would need to think, did I replace something, or what was it again? Is certainly not a very big issue. But we have a service department, so both in the US and in Belgium, that we can be called upon as well. So if the distributor is not giving the right answer or not capable, then there's a problem.
Where is the service department in the US?
Anderson, Missouri.
Okay. So for that follow-up, so let's say 6 months later, a year later, you know, service help, is that done under a contract basis? How is the follow-up?
Well, it depends a little bit.
The questions that come up, are those just available to call the distributor at any point for free? Or is there, you know, different, how is the longer term service set up, I guess?
Well, at the moment, we don't have a contract for it. It's normally, if they don't abuse it, it's very little call up on the distributor.
Okay.
Obviously, if they're calling every day, we might have to start thinking differently. Yeah. But normally, we don't see the need. Obviously, when we think further on with cloud facilities and that thing, we haven't made up our mind yet. Are we going to deal with that? But that might change a little bit, but then there will be other possibilities by exchanging data with a feed supplier or with the research facility or with somebody else. And the farmer will be in control of his data, but he can allow other people to access them, to use them for their own purpose. And that's something a new ball game, so which we still need to think about. But at the moment, the farmer just calls his distributor when something goes wrong, and he will answer the call. If it's a bit complex, then he will contact Roxell.
So for putting together a bid on a system, there has to be a provision of a facility that you can house it in. I'm assuming. Yes. And what else needs to be provided by the site to that separate from what you'd be providing from your system? Besides electricity and a building, everything else ties in it. How, in terms of the installation, do you do the installation, or do we have to contract, or the people do their own installation? How does that work?
Well, it does. Like I said, I basically have they're located in Nebraska. Midwest Livestock is. They do a lot of work for Roxell. They are a Roxell distributor, and they go all over the upper Midwest. I contacted them, and so how it would work would be a customer would either contact them directly or contact me, ask for a quote, give me the dimensions of their barn and what they were trying to accomplish or whatever. We obviously get Ludo involved, but anyway. Once I get a quote for the cost of the system, then I would give that to Midwest Livestock, and you would actually purchase the system from them. And at that point, then you could determine whether you wanted Midwest Livestock to do the installation, or if you wanted to attempt the installation yourself. So, okay. But regardless, and again, if there's somebody else we need to contact, we can, but Midwest Livestock is who I have visited with, and they are willing to undergo the training necessary. They want to assume any service calls in the future after Roxell, gives it a 100% go, whatever. They told me they wanted to accept the daily, service call responsibility, and they will keep, whether the customer may want to keep some parts on his farm, but they also agreed that they would be willing to keep a limited supply of necessary parts to take care of any customers. So
how many from Midwest, how many systems have they put in, or are they going through that process?
No, we have not, unfortunately. Roxell, until sometime late last year, Roxell was never given the go-ahead to sell poultry, swine equipment in the U.S. So having said that, there is no multi-fast systems installed in the U.S. right now.
Charles, I got a question. This is Carlos. Is because we have a contractor and he has built several of the barns that we manage, and he is probably going to build or research barn, and he has shown some interest in well, he wants to install that system. So would who would guide him on the installation? And he has installed some other research equipment, so he's not naive as far as that goes. But he just wants to be sure that when he installs it, he doesn't mess up installing whatever system we choose to go with.
Yeah, well, we as Ludo said, there'll be a representative from Roxell will actually come to your facility prior to the installation to understand and help you understand exactly how it needs to be installed and what all components you need. Once the system arrives, especially since this will be the first installation for, number one, a customer, contractor, or in the U.S., Roxell will provide oversight on, whether we're there every day or not, but certainly to be able to understand how to wire up the electronic components. There'll be training involved, and then there'll also be, as Ludo pointed out, before the system's ever commissioned and said it's done, we're through with it, it's all yours today, it'll be thoroughly gone through with one of Ludo's trained guys from Roxell. I mean, we, not just because this is a new deal, but that's not how Roxell operates. We're customer oriented as well. I mean, we're not going to sell you a system and it failed, because if we do that, that's the last system we'll ever sell in the U.S. So our full intentions are to make sure the customer is happy and knows how the system works.
Yeah, no, and I understand that I'm not questioning that portion. It's just for us to understand who is going to install it, and especially because we have our contractor that will install the system. So it would be purchased through Nebraska, delivered, and then Roxell would guide them. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, sir. Correct. That's absolutely that's the trail.
Okay. So as far as the setup, and you guys seen ours, so do we need to provide more accurate measurements to have a detailed list on what we need to do on our end to make sure everything fits like Lego pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. The more details you can provide, your barn layout, what your intentions are, what you're trying to accomplish, what maybe your future endeavors are going to look like, the more of that information that I can get and pass on to Ludo, just allows us to design your system for you so that you're happy and you get exactly what you need. If you just say I need a multi-fast system to feed X number of pigs, Ludo may get it right. He may get it wrong. So
we have some of these, and Carlos was talking about that you probably can move the kitchen around. There's some things that aren't set in stone yet. And we have other ones where bins are in place, existing systems where we probably need some help with, if we're going to add a kitchen, where's the best place to put the kitchen relative to this current site, and where the bins are located, that we can get them in, all those kind of things.
The more info I get, the more precise we can design the system.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. On really
needs some training as well, so we can.
So on research barns, is it just standard to quote those with the sensor at the feeder level for the automatic feeding, as well as
most of the time,
as well as the mixer?
If people are really looking at sort of precise in feeding, obviously, then the sensor comes with.
Carlos, you had another question?
Yes, and and I'm not sure about it, but having worked with some of the genetic equipment, some of the companies that I've dealt with, there was like a 6-month service visit or a 12-month service visit where they would come and kind of blow the dust out of the equipment, tear it down, and put it back together. Is something like this required for this system, or how would this work?
That it's not really needed, no.
Okay.
No, I can say it's a fairly robust system. If you're talking about sort of critical spare parts you need to keep, the only thing we are talking about is maybe 1 or 2 automatic outlets, a motor or 2, that's probably about it.
Okay, yeah, and that was my next question, because we had a toolbox full of, well, with spare parts, and they were being charged as needed, I think. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, before I think we got most people on, we were talking here that my introduction to Roxell was at Agri Super like 7 or 8 years ago, and that system, I mean, just a little bit of background is that there's nobody in Chile that really works for Roxell. They bought the system. They had help installing it, but the way that they've described it to me is that it's worked for them. They've replaced a few sensors over the years, but not very many, and it's been, like you said, it's been quite robust for them, and is the reason that we're excited about talking to you about it.
And that, Mike, if I correct me, but that's a chain.
That's a chain-driven system in their particular one, but I don't know what the decisions, or whether there was even the option of direct ones at that time.
And that's what I was going to ask you guys. And so, with thinking specifically of this straight line flex auger system, you don't have in the U.S. that are pig focused. Do you have any in the poultry industry that are here yet, or other countries with this specific flex auger straight line system? Is anybody using it yet?
Poultry, we have people using the multifast, but that's mainly to fill day bins. Also, again, with supply bins outside the fence, and then filling up day bins that we do have. And I must say, I've also seen research on multi-phase feeding with broilers, and that they said there was a benefit. There was like 2 euro cents per broiler, but if you have the system like with 100,000 broilers, it's per round about 2,500 euros that you gain with it. But
what about the group in the UK that has a system? Is it a flex auger system? Okay.
It's a flex
so you have it in research barns
yes.
right now, just not in research barns in the United States.
Is that's the one that's going into the Centera barn, correct? Or not?
So the flex auger versus the cable system, that when you're talking about the Centera setup, it was
that's
a flex auger.
It's flex auger, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but I don't know if any of you guys know Richard Hooper, because and some of his presentations where he mentioned research from Kansas State University. He uses the system. He's very happy with them. It's also with flex hours. He's in charge of the research facility of Harper Adams University in the UK, and he's quite happy to share information with you guys if you want to contact him.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think it wouldn't be a problem. If you want to visit, just let us know. We'll try to organize it.
Are the drops pneumatic drops? Are they electronic?
Electronic.
24 volt. They run off just a small electrical charge, 24 volts.
One of the other things we run into in the Midwest, obviously, is lightning. And how do you handle have anything to handle the lightning issues?
Well, I've sold not for swine application of this kind, but for other applications, mainly up in Canada. I've sold several of those automatic drops, but they've been inside. They've never been outside exposed to the weather. They've been in the barn. But I've had in 7 years. I don't know unless they've got one that I didn't know about. I haven't been asked to replace or get replacements for any of the ones.
With our FeedLogix, and we've fried boards numerous times with lightning strikes and sites. So we get a lot of lightning.
I guess is there safeguards that we need to be thinking about on the front side with the electronic components.
I'm just trying to think of the ease of getting it back up and running when
Right.
because we'll have them. It's just a matter of when.
That's something I can also do. Electronic
I mean, it's probably a little
That's
different
all
than what you may deal with
Yeah.
in Europe, as
Yeah.
much just with
Don't have
the
much
storms that we
problems on
have.
that.
Yeah.
So I bet every one of our research barns has been hit at one time or another.
I would think if it's the controller that controls the system, it's like, we have house controllers today, whether they're Tortronics or whatever the house controller is today. Yeah, they get struck by lightning and the board's burned out.
Gone,
I would
yeah.
think that
How quickly you can replace a board.
Exactly. I would
that
think
kind
we
of
would
thing.
want to have, whether you have it or I
Yeah,
have it, or
exactly.
you have one and I have one, but we each want to have the main board.
Some backup.
Yeah.
And there's a number with these barns that these guys that are on the call and others that share stuff back and forth at times too, as needed.
Yeah, Ben always steals our STS 400 boards. So.
Yeah.
Or I guess they steal Chad Hastings now.
Yeah, now it's Chad's. Yeah.
We pay for him eventually when he sends the bill.
You just have to remind me to send the bill.
Yeah, that's good. But I mean, obviously, the big question everybody has always is cost, and I know it's hard to get down to a cost until you get parameters on the site.
Well, I just say that when this process first started, Jason, he just did a hypothetical deal. I think he gave us some dimensions, like a barn 200 foot long and with 50 pins. It had 6 bins sitting at the end, and based off of that hypothetical, I passed that information on to Ludo. He gave me the components I needed. I priced them, sent that to Midwest Livestock, and for that size barn, that's 50 drops with 6 bins and whatever, that complete system delivered to the U.S. with the cost factored in was around $38,000. So installation would obviously be on top of that, but just the cost of the system was around $38,000.
And that's including bins and including.
No, it did not include the bins. That's just a system, but that was bringing augers from the bottom of the existing bins into the house to the system. But I didn't factor in any bins or any of that. So
So I mean, for you guys on the phone, it was roughly a 1,200, kind of like a New Horizon type of a barn. If you was to put one in a single barn like that. Just kind of gave the guidelines there, but I mean, it sounds like, I mean, if you can even potentially feed more than one barn, that you end up having
because
some
if you can, I mean, because a lot of these where you feed, and these different sites, I mean, we have anywhere from 2,400 head up to 5,000 or 6,000 on a site that, with multiple barns. But I think from the way you're describing it here, as long as those barns are all reachable and within a proximity, it should be able, any of the sites we're talking about or that I'm aware of, we'd be able to feed almost every pig on that site, unless they're on different sides of roads like we talked about at New Horizon or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the capacity constraints that they're saying are true with how we're trying to get these pigs fed and everything,
They'll feed everything on a site. With one system.
I know we did at the Sunterra site, just for everybody to know, I mean, this system's going in there and South Dakota Research Nursery that's being built. I mean, we have 2 individual, it's a 2,400 head nursery, 2 1,200 head rooms, and we've chosen to put 2 independent lines to the individual rooms. So in case something did happen, the whole barn isn't tied to a single.
So you have two lines. So the way that this is described, that you have 2 of the what do you call them? The routes or routes. So you have 2 separate routes going to the same.
That's my
Okay.
Just as a backup.
And that's more of ultimately all your really cost is that first distance to get from room 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Because then everything else is the same. We just did that just in case something happens, and maybe it's just being gun shy and all the other systems and problems, but just so a whole barn doesn't go down if something happened in one of the
Well,
lines.
the other way that and this, tell me if it really is overkill, but the other one I was thinking about is having that kind of design, but duplicating the lines all the way through the system in order to, if you, the main reason would be is antibiotic versus no antibiotic, and you wanted to make darn sure you clean things out, that you would have a dedicated clean system and a dirty system, if you don't call it that.
How much headroom do you need for the mixer and the two-way with your hopper below?
Well, it depends a little bit how many.
How you stack those
yeah.
lines. Yeah. What would be the minimum, if you think about it if you brought in, let's say 4 lines as just an example, what would be the approximate height headroom you need?
Calculate, but I know like the system we put in Argentina with about 12, that was about 6 meters.
6 meters, so it'd be about 20 feet. Yeah, because you need I think we're going to need quite a bit of.
You'll need. I mean, if
sizable building.
Yeah, because you'll have your little hopper underneath the multifast. And the multifast system itself is a big.
Yeah.
And then you got your augers on top of that. So yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah, with these sites, you're thinking about, we're going to need a small, tall building.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be big, but
it's quite a bit of height though. From a lot of these would be thinking of a 10-foot, 12-foot. That's not
no,
enough.
that's not going to be enough.
Yeah. It's a good question, Ben.
Because how tall is the mixer itself?
Like
The 100
what's
liter.
Yeah.
Like on the screen right there, one offer, you got like 2 of the hoppers at the bottom, it looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
So like to get to the top of that stack right there.
Well, we have sent one to Sao Paulo. They show last year a wire mixer with a hopper underneath, and it was fitted into a container. So that must have been just under 2 meters, I think.
Just under 2 meters. So but the
Those
mix.
are 100 liter wire mixer. The 200 is a bit high.
The 100 liter is that
With
mixer,
the hopper and
with the hopper, it's about 2 meters with a hopper.
And then you have.
So you have about a meter for each of them.
Well, you get first a bit where because you need to have the wire mixer cannot have a fixed contact with the multiple control unit above it. There's always sort of a pipe which is
Can we go back to that picture, Mike? There was that. I don't know if that would get us.
I'm trying to get. I'm sorry. Which one are we trying to get to?
Keep going back. There was a picture of the mixer just by itself, right there, maybe.
like that. That would be sort of like just maybe 2 meters or something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That just the mixer itself is probably going to be that round multifast mixer on top of that little day bin. Just the mixer itself is probably going to be close to it's at least 3 feet in diameter at least, and then you got another 3 or 4 feet underneath it. So I mean, that little system you're looking at right there, that's probably 8 or 9 feet tall right there.
Yeah, I was just thinking that but this one with augers going into the top, that would probably be about the shortest one that we've gotten these.
Yeah, that's probably the one thing from your, I know we're still trying to figure out the kitchen area and that dimension. I mean, exactly, and I'm not sure we yet Sunterra, and that's probably one thing. Just when people call, and even we got to figure it out yet there with Carlos, or we need to see exactly where we're at, but that. Trying to get a handle on what that kitchen area needs to look like from a size standpoint.
Well, the only thing we have right now is a 20 by 20 by 14 foot in height building, but that's as far as we've gone on that end.
Right, and whether we actually need 20 by 20, I mean that's a big room. Unless we use it for some other
And
storage and.
the other one you start
things, but-
thinking about is, can you build this like we've done with what we've done with the barns for the doghouse for the lines, where you don't need a 20-foot building, the whole thing,
Yeah.
but if you need to bring in a doghouse just for where those
Yeah,
augers
On
come
top
in.
of the building.
Ben, isn't that how the old M2P2 buildings were put together that First Renes is using now?
So it would have feed kitchens, yeah, that would be tall. So it would have 18 feed lines that would fill into a hopper that would be reversible. So that weigh hopper would have a belt that reversed back and forth and filled up a similar hopper to like that black one there that would dump into a chain disc. So it would be weighing the left side while the right side is emptying. Does that make sense? So kind of like a surge that it dumps into.
Yep.
And then it would be the fan controls.
Yeah. Well, and what becomes important too, with the height that we're shooting for here, we got to make sure we're putting our bend pad at the appropriate distance to
get a straight line,
get
especially
that angle up,
that auger.
because
But it's flex on.
it's a flex auger
flex
coming in,
auger,
but you still got to
you
get,
can only
you
bend
need to be a
those
little bit
so
away from the
far.
building. Yeah.
When you can look at this in the height, so it looks like on the right-hand side, it's like pairs of them stacked
Yep.
on top of each
Yeah,
other. Around the left, you've got maybe 3 or 4, and so it's going to minimize.
Yeah, the left has a smaller height requirement than the right one does.
And from your guys' side, does it matter how that gets lined up, or is that a?
Is there an advantage one direction or the other?
There are a few restrictions. So like with the 200 liter, the central inlet is about 125, and the sides they are 90. So if you want to use a lot of 125 supplies, then you need obviously
What do you mean 125?
the tubes.
Oh, the size of the.
Well,
Okay. But
yeah, literally, see how.
On the side, it's always 90. So if there you want to put your
So here
smaller
they're
capacity.
here they're stacked up
Quantities.
and dropping down around. You have some
Yeah.
here they're all in a central stack versus you got multiple stacks
Yeah.
flowing in. Is there an advantage over this versus this?
Not particularly there, that's less high, and then
Yeah.
it fits it in the building.
That's why I was
Yeah.
curious
Yeah.
whether this is it's a way to get the less
Yeah,
height
yeah.
and still accomplish it.
But if you're going to do on both sides supplies from 125, then the roof would be above the 100 liter weighing.
So in ordering the equipment
Why
for
did you get the
installation,
motors,
you know, when specifying, a producer would need to say whether we want to have the basically 3 watt. I mean, that's 3 across versus the double stack, right? Because that's different.
Oh yeah, well, we can look at
Yeah.
the layout and
Okay.
once at the initial setup.
Okay. Yeah.
What's possible, what's
Yeah,
not
the feed
possible.
kitchen building is going to be fairly important.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
designed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a thought I had on these existing sites is, would you have enough capacity and could you get the system to work so that really you only had the mixer, and maybe half that hopper, or even like for us, our augers would be above the 7-foot ceiling today. And could it be positioned off to the corner of the barn and fill from there?
Yeah, it depends on how you want to set up like your system, Ben, because I think this mixer and like surge, tub underneath, you can serve more than one barn. So what you're describing there is actually putting one in each of your 5 barns, and you don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it may be, and that's something to look at. It may be better to long term to have a central one that feeds all 5 barns.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be more and more the idea.
And you set your bins up around that, or yeah.
And so then back to your question, Ben, if you wanted to do that, and if you wanted to make the choice that you're always going to bring in complete diets with no blending, when you could cut 3 foot of it off with not even including that mixer and just have that weigh whatever you want to call a weigh bin or whatever that is underneath, and then it probably would work in your system like you're describing.
So I think one of the advantages of doing some of these kitchens is getting all that electronics the heck out of the barn.
Exactly.
I mean, barn environments aren't great for
No.
computers.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the electronic drops and the white plastic Nova Core tube and one drive motor at the end of the line. That's none of that play. Yeah, that's all that's inside.
Yeah, the solenoids, the lines. Now, I mean, the lines. Should probably have went back to one where you got it running through the system, the dumping into the feeders. Here we go. How do I know these solenoid lines drop down? And I was trying to remember that from AgriSuper's. So if you have 50 feeders and 25 as an example in one row like this, you have a solenoid that's sitting in each one of these. Does that come up into a central? How do you get all those lines back to the computer? What's that look like?
That's going to be wired up from each outlet to the computer.
So there'll be 25 cables running all the way back to that central.
Yeah.
Okay, because that does become I was just trying to think from the way with washing barns and stuff. I mean, that's going to around that tube. We're going to have a lot of cables. I thought that was the way AgriSupers was doing.
Would you?
You put that inside something?
Would you put that inside?
Tube, or
Yeah.
you just leave it?
But when
Just
we're
hang
talking
on.
about these cables, I mean, how big a diameter line?
Just a little bitty one.
It's like a computer
Yeah, just a
cable.
little.
So I mean,
Just
so
like,
you could put it all in conduit.
yeah, so big piece of great conduit. Put it all.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that we tend. These wouldn't be quite as bad where they're at, but what gives us trouble with our scales a lot of times, mice and stuff are a real problem with cables.
Hmm.
And so it's,
Yeah.
Up in the high, they're not as big an issue, but.
So I mean, I understand it's European presentation right here and European kind
Yeah,
of types of
yeah.
styles of feeders and stuff too.
Yeah.
But when we start thinking about a longer feeder, kind of like what we saw this morning at our farm, where is that sensor located to indicate the level of the feed in the feeder?
That's, well, you can choose a little bit.
Wherever you want.
Normally somewhere, I would say, like just a little bit off center. I would put it.
Okay. It's something that attaches to the feeder.
It hangs from
Does
the.
it-
Yeah. No, you can sort of if you got some dividers
Yep.
or metal, you can fix it to it so that it's
Yeah,
it
well, I
takes
mean,
some
we-
side.
Sure.
The way I would envision, Jason, is that like if we have a center tube where it's coming down, is it would hang and it'd be attached to somewhere on the inside of the feeder to keep it at the right height.
Yep.
But it would be hanging either laying against the side of the feeder or in the middle of the feeder.
Yeah, we offer, there's a little, and depending on what kind of application, if you're going to mount it to a metal hopper, so to speak, we have a little kit where you just bolt this holder right onto this metal and it fixes the,
Fits in there.
yeah, or on a plastic
That's
tube,
what I
like on that upper picture up there. You just pick out a spot from the bottom of the drop to the where the pipe goes into the top of that Blue Hawks feeder, and you just drill a hole in that plastic and put this little sensor in there wherever you want.
Because there's two sensors at every feeder, right? There's one, isn't there one at the top that runs the I mean, I don't know if it's called a sensor, but there's a line that runs the solenoid at the top.
Yes.
And then there's the sensor that goes down into the
Yes.
feeder.
Yes. So actually, yeah, there'll be 50
50
of
lines.
those
Yes.
little computer
Yeah,
cords
these cords
instead
coming
of
back.
instead of 25. Yeah.
So I mean, that'd be only thinking out loud, when we get to dumping these barns and cleaning barns, I mean, if they're turning feeders over, we're not going to want those stationary where it takes a lot of bolts and stuff to take them in and out. We're going to want something that they can pull it out,
Clip
turn
on thing.
that
Yeah.
feeder,
Yeah.
dump it over,
And-
be able to get in.
And
and out
what
the
do
right
they
spot.
do with those when they're washing barns? I mean, because you probably don't want to pressure wash that sensor directly, I wouldn't think. But those are, I mean, questions like that. I have no idea.
No, it's best not to.
Those are the kinds of things we're going to need to understand. Do they just do a?
No, we can have a clip on and you click it outside.
You hang it up over the feed line and kind of thing. put it in a bag or whatever. I mean, because we do that with load cells and stuff now. It's cover them. Okay.
On the you mentioned load cells, and I just remembered. So I think one of the questions that I had was on the load cells and connecting those directly to the farm manager. Do they have to be specific load cells for that to happen?
Load cells are on the scale; they are automatically connected.
Yeah, are they? That's what he was asking. Are they specific load cells that or where does the measurement? How does the measurement from the load cells get it gets transmitted into the farm manager? Do you have to have certain load cells to do that, or can they be replaced with load cells in the U.S. as an example when one goes bad? How does that work?
Well, we can. Well, they are pretty robust as well, but yeah, we work with one type, and that, but it can be.
Yeah, what type? Because I think we were looking at using AP for those load cells.
Are you talking, Carlos, on the bends outside or
on the scales?
On the scale inside. You're talking about bends, right?
Well, I guess both.
Okay.
Because the scale would be a separate issue. I mean, the pig scale would be a separate issue than.
Oh no, not the pig scale, but I mean on the bends outside, and then the mixer would have another one, right?
With different load cells, yeah.
But that all hooks into that software system to be able to monitor bend volumes inside.
Yeah.
You should be able to pull the load cells from those bins through a junction box of just about anybody's and get it to send communicate with the farm manager. Yeah, we do that now with other sites.
Okay. So they're not brand specific.
No.
Okay.
Good. Other questions?
So what's the biggest downfall for the straight line flex auger system?
Biggest downfall if you got a major breakdown somewhere, the way your mixer breaks down or something. Obviously you have a problem. But, haven't experienced it so far yet. Once we have had, but that was with the first layout of the new mixing device, that one of the arms broke off. That's about it. But it's welded on and again, and it worked again. But we have done in the new layouts, we have done a stronger arm.
Do you know, like coming out of the weigh hopper at the bottom of the mixer, what's your tolerance level of that amount of weight actually reaching the feeder? You know, are we plus or minus what percentage?
Probably less than 2%.
Less than 2%. Kyle or Chad or Ben, do you guys have any other questions or anybody else on the line?
I was wondering if you have a breakdown, how long does it take to get the feeders back to full again?
Depending on how many feeders we're filling.
Yeah, if there's 43 feeders, the holding capacity is about 300 pounds. How long would it take to get those back to full again?
Well, it depends a little bit on the type of breakdown, because we have always, if the electronics fail, a manual override that we still can feed apart from the electronic steering of the system. And otherwise,
let's think about that. Is you said you can do 7,000 kilograms per hour is what if we had this thing designed right. And Becky, you're saying that if we wanted to put let's take 100 kilograms per feeder.
Yes.
As an example, and you're doing this on 48 feeders.
That'd be about 46.
46 feeders.
Yep.
So I mean, in theory, we should be able to do it in an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
In theory.
Yeah.
Well, and in that case too, what you could do is you could trim back the amount of feed.
But
per
it's
feeder.
going to be a lot faster than what a feed logic catch it.
Yeah, that's always my main concern, because that
It
runs
doesn't
into
have to go
hours.
back and get feed. It sends it down a line.
Yeah, there's multiple mixing. I mean, when one's leaving and it's mixing another batch right behind it, it's in constant motion.
Okay.
And that was based on pelleted diets as well, right?
Yeah, pelleted diets at the 7,000 kilograms, because mash diets, you probably can't move quite that much. Yeah. Mash diets should be, and that's actually
also is influenced a bit by your mixing time and that sort of thing. How much you do per hour.
The other part on the clean out that I just want to make sure that as we talk through this, and we would be feeding a lot of mash diets and less pelleted diets, and so that's the clean out is the one that I always I'm curious with the flex augers. I'm having a hard time and seeing the clean out portion of it myself. But so some of the things you said about the different designs of your flex auger and stuff might help that.
Yeah, I know you said there's, maybe about 2% change from the mixer to the feeder. If that's in a pellet, have you done that same test with a meal diet?
Most of those are with meal diet.
Most meal diets?
With meal.
Okay.
It's one of the disadvantages with anti-tube system with pellets is the noise.
The noise.
Yeah.
We can follow up with the gentleman in the UK that has this other farm. He's done these types of trials to measure tolerance there as well too, so we can reach out to him and get some input.
Yeah.
And then there is on YouTube a presentation from him about multi-phase feeding, and there he mentions the tolerances and the accuracy of the system. This presentation from him from 2014 on multi-phase feeding.
Okay. So how long has he had the system in place?
100% sure, but 7-8 years at least.
Okay, perfect.
Jason, you want to follow up with him?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the next step is to get his contact and get a phone call with him and talk through what he's experienced.
Yep. And I know with Wolfgang, he said he'd be happy to visit about if anybody has questions about the one that they have, and he gave me, I've got the specs on exactly what they put in, whenever that was. So it was years ago, but
a little bit different system than what we're talking about here as far as design.
It's a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, it's got, the difference is they've got the chain disc. That'd be the main difference. Otherwise, and their barn is a 96 pen with like 20. I remember if it's 28 or 28 pigs per pen, something like that is their system.
Good.
The all pelleted feed.
Yep.
Okay,
well,
good.
I don't have any more questions, so.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and I do have this saved and recorded, and I'll if you have somebody else that wants to see it in the system, I'll figure out a way to load it somewhere.
If you could send it to me so I can just share it with the rest of the group, would appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I know the file's going to be too big to just ship, but I'll figure out a place. I'll figure out a way to upload it someplace for you, Carlos, that we can.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
And watch. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.